Hello and welcome back to Beyond the Veil background information. Sorry. Today we're doing an Angels and Demons video, and as we're dealing with the Kings of Hell from the Asgardia, I thought we'd just stick with that, and then afterwards I'll do a couple of angel ones. So we'll clear this list. So today we're doing about Beleth. So that should be interesting. As always, I start with a quote from a story where one of them is mentioned, then I give you the background information, and then I give you my profile for the character within my Veil on the Veil paranormal universe. So, let's get into it then. Our best choice is to talk to one of the kings to get them on our side, which means we're best to find the most violent and loudest one that might be willing to fight. How about Beleth? Quote from To Be Weak and Miserable. Beleth is a king of hell and listed as the 13th spirit in the Asgardia, and appears in several other grimoires as a dominating, overwhelming power of fury and might. According to some of the texts, Beleth once lived as one of the powers in heaven, sometimes called Beleth, or Byleth. He commands 85 legions and arrives to various musical fanfare upon a large white charger, that is a grey war horse, that is said to represent conquest. In some illustrations, he's drawn upon the horse as a great knight, and in the Dictionary Infernal, he's a cat-headed fellow blowing a trumpet, although I really am not sure where in the description this comes from. According to Pseudemonic Anarchia Demonum, but also repeated in other grimoires, Beleth was summoned by Noah's son Ham after the flood to aid him in writing a book on mathematics. That sounds rather bizarre, of course, as depending on which source you go to for the causes of the flood. For the cause of the flood, some say it was to wash away those with the forbidden knowledge from the Watchers. But who can say it on that point? Only that if Beleth was also a power in heaven, which generally tends to refer to as celestial bodies, that would mean he was a star that fell and fought against God. So there is a bit of confusion on that point. All the same, Beleth is intelligent and makes a point to scare whoever summons him with fury, as well as requires them to wear a silver ring on the middle finger of the left hand, held to their face in a sign of respect for his position as a king. As can be expected, all the demons of hell are prideful, and some sources state that Beleth is unhappy with his plight in hell, and thus belligerent towards all others, and working on his own machinations. Alongside the White Charger, Beleth seems to hold sway over the love of men and women, and understanding that is often refers to obedience, loyalty, and particularly could make people fans of someone. It's obvious he can create leaders through his powers. But Beleth is temperamental and apparently will disobey, which seems to lead some to interpret him as belligerent in his role as demon. Like a lot of others for my development of him in the Veil, I make Beleth think he's better than everyone and shouldn't be in hell, trapped in denial, and so can be an interesting character to work with when I do use them in stories, which isn't very often, to be fair. So name, Beleth, position, King of Hell, story featured in Ambitious Aim and To Be Weak and Miserable, role, General of Hell, gender, male, description, appearing initially as a radiant glowing light upon a grey horse with a radiant crown of stars about their head. They wear terrifying spiked armour and are insanely large to the point a human could get squashed beneath their hoof. The angrier Beleth gets, the more his armour spikes up and his horse turns demonic, his beautiful face becoming ogreish and terrifying, but when he is given due respect, he transforms into a small fellow with the head of a heavy cat to state he is calm and satisfied with the respect given, but still temperamental. Realm Hell. Abilities: he can give great intelligence and answers to any questions, as well as aid in conquest of hearts. Although not making others fall in love, he can create the parasocial bonds that draw people to celebrities and generals. He can make someone famous or adored no matter their initial faults, but it always comes with an inevitable fall because Beleth's own pride against Lucifer means Lucifer will always find a way to ruin the arrangement. Master Lucifer, although he'd rather be his own master. Personality: arrogant, proud, aggressive, and very bad-tempered. Beleth lives in denial over his role in fighting him and instead tends to act as if he got dragged down without a fair trial, and thus loses his temper at anyone who states otherwise. He thinks he deserves better than the others, so he wars with his fellow kings and tries to take over their spots, as well as constantly tries to take on Belial's position so that he can be deemed higher than the other knights. He does have evidence to rule hell instead, believing he could bridge the gap between heaven and hell, but he's terrified of Lucifer because Lucifer always has someone watching him, and so Beleth tries not to speak up around them. Relations, Lucifer. Beleth was initially obedient to Lucifer, but didn't think they would fail, and upon falling and losing all his radiance in the fires of Beleth went into denial, and though granted a great position by Lucifer, he often tends to think he's better as the Emperor of Hell than Lucifer. Lucifer keeps him around and empowered to enjoy the sport of defeating him, but Beleth is petrified of Lucifer because, unlike the almighty, Lucifer can't go. He hates that Belial has a more lofty position than himself and seeks to undermine him to the point Belial often is the one spying on him and gives Lucifer over all his contracts so that Beleth can't gain the souls, or at least is reduced in his abilities to be stronger. While Beleth was unclearly against Baal entirely and did his best to counter Baal's powers amongst the demons to try and keep them on Lucifer's side, Baal brought Lucifer and Beleth together in an alliance that was strong enough to counter Baal, and thus Beleth made it his mission to wipe out all of Baal's followers in Person. His problematic neighbour, Beleth hates Person and often corrupts his legions to follow him and enters his realm to claim it for their own. The pair are often at war, but because Beleth is so much stronger, and Person is more keen on slinking and hiding, Person often escapes hell for the veil to keep away from Beleth, letting Lucifer deal with him. Paimon and Beleth butt heads not only over territory, but because Paimon is loyal to Lucifer and claims himself the greatest king, and thus is always a point of contention with Beleth. Asmodeus. Generally, they really do not get along because Beleth doesn't understand Mars, but Asmodeus insists their powers over hearts are similar. He avoids Asmodeus as much as possible. Vine, another neighbouring king that curiously Beleth is more tolerant of because Vine is not ambitious but is very cautious of everything he can see. Unlike Paimon, who has cursed his powers, Vine often uses them to counsel his fellows, and so is one of the rare kings the other kings do not outwardly fight with. Zagan. Beleth hates Zagan because he tries hard not to get lured into an argument, and regularly Beleth just spews hate and sends minions to steal Zagan to wind him up. To wind him up. He cannot accept that Zagan is much more content over their loss from the fall and less inclined to fight. Balin and Beleth have a love-hate relationship. They fight constantly, but then they find themselves in one another's beds afterwards. Balin is as powerful and as capable as Beleth, and thus they often wage war games against each other for fun. And during the defeat of Baal, they were constantly trying to outdo the other, but it led to something unexpected that Beleth has kept and has meant, though they fight, it's more in the manner of rivals and competition than bloodthirsty campaigns of conquest, which Beleth doesn't appreciate. Starlet, the unexpected child caused by tryst with Balin. Beleth realized the vacuum left behind by all upon Earth needed to be filled, and the need for someone to steer the believers back to the right path. Beleth shared his bowels with his daughter and guided her to the veil and Earth to separate it and close the veil off almost completely, so that Baal and his dominion was just a vague memory for others. And then she signed some of the eldest forms of vampire with Lilitu to help guide and control the veil, making her pretty important, and Beleth rather important too. So history. One of the powers in heaven, Beleth was a guiding star that was adored by all that saw him and gave a navigation point within the sky. However, like many, he found he was not being utilised to the fullest of his powers, and so joined Lucifer in the belief he could be greater. Indeed, his voice and his radiance was enough to draw in legions to follow after Lucifer, and then Beleth proved himself a cunning military might that was able to keep the rabble following Lucifer up until their defeat. The removal of his wings came with the fall of his star to the earth, to a lack of fanfare, and as he was hurled like his star, Beleth gained a new kind of radiance in his wrath and fury for being thrown when it was clear him he had greater powers, and they were all jealous of him. Upon landing in hell, he turned into a violent being of pure fire, and as Lucifer summoned his followers up, Beleth challenged Lucifer for dominance over his new kingdom, only to find that even with a damaged leg and wings, Lucifer was still more powerful and even smothered his fire with that of hell's to make Beleth close to actual mortality and thus to fear Lucifer. But his abilities and his strength were applauded by Belial and Beelzebub for reminding them all they still have power and ambition, and that would guide them with Lucifer to rule hell better than heaven. In response, Beleth was given the title of the king, and thus he flexed his power and his might about his neighbours, causing strife but always questioning if he could ever better Lucifer. Beleth's contentment in being malcontent were brought to a head when Bolt emerged and dared to war with Lucifer, using Beleth and his favourite rival Balaam to work together, and for Beleth to work with Lucifer to defeat Bolt's army. He also found his daughter Darla had a task ahead of her to prevent Bolt's infection from corrupting the veil further, which Beleth viewed as the Hell's Earth. Even though he has done something great for the veil, and in the name of unity, he still continues to be malcontent and hate upon his fellows and Lucifer. Final comments. I don't normally look for YouTube videos for any of these, but I thought to. And the amount of AI slop, as well as the repetition of the same thing over and over, was just really bad. I mean, I watched a short that covered everything in a minute, then saw a video that was 20 minutes long and repeating the same thing in different ways for the 20 minutes, and not once describing why it was using the image of the cat head. And well, I just got really irritated with it, especially when they said some things I couldn't find any reference for. Especially as I like to have a bit of reference. I mean, I know when I do my profiles, there's a lot of stuff I add because I feel for what I'm working for in the story and what I'm looking for in a character, this works for them. But I'm aware that that is my own fiction of it. I'm not. That's why I tell you I have the background information at the start and then I have my characterization. So, I separate them. But yeah, I almost had a rant previously about AI slop, so I'm not going to do that now. But I'll just make a note. When you look for demon and angel stuff, there is a lot of it. Sure, a lot of this could be covered in just a short that's like 15, maybe a minute long at most. But it's just there's so much of it, and it's great. But rather than complain anymore, I hope you enjoyed that, and please like, share, subscribe. Comment anything you like. If you want to comment with a demon you want me to talk about or an angel you want me to talk about as well, especially for the bit where I'm going to have the angels after the kings of hell. Anyone you want to know about, please comment below. Thank you. Bye.